Former President Trump back in Washington, D.C. today, meeting with GOP lawmakers and saying that there is tremendous unity in the Republican Party.
We want to see borders. We want to see strong military. We want to see money not wasted all over the world. We don't want to see Russian ships right off the coast of Florida, which is what they are right now. That's unthinkable. We want to see just success for our country. And we don't have success right now.
The truth about January 6th is finally coming out, you guys. And for one, you've got Representative Loudermilk's committee just uncovered a hidden transcript that proves that then President Donald Trump did in fact offer 10,000, counting 10,000 National Guard troops to secure the U.S. Capitol, which was turned down, which kind of negates the narrative that the original Pelosi-appointed January 6th committee has been trying to push down the American people's throats.
With that, let's bring in Republican Florida Congressman Byron, who was at the House meeting and is reportedly on the Trump VP shortlist. He's also part of our new Fox Nation special, Anti-Semitism in America, which is Ben Hall's new Fox Nation special. Congressman, welcome. Good to have you here today. As has been pointed out, this was President Trump's first trip back to Capitol Hill since January the 6th. What was it like in that room?
It was great. You know, the president was really talking about his mission, his agenda. He talked a lot about wanting to make sure he could do everything he could to help House Republicans keep our majority and actually increase it, and what his personal time investments would be to helping members up here on Capitol Hill who are in tough re-elections, and also candidates who are in tough re-elections where we're trying to pick up seats to get some of the Democrats off of Capitol Hill and get our country back on track. That's what he was talking about. He also expanded in some policy areas, really thinking deeply about ways to make America great again, because we are a struggling nation right now with Joe Biden as president. And so he's taking the time to think through all those things, talk with the members of the House about them. Now,
already the Republican Party, they're already trying to reverse the damage here, guys. In fact, there's a new House GOP-led effort to revoke the subpoenas that the House Select Committee on January 6th sent to key aides to former President Donald Trump. Representatives Andy Briggs, Thomas Massie, and Eric Burlison introduced a resolution to rescind subpoenas that the now defunct committee sent to Steve Bannon, Mark Meadows, Peter Navarro, and Dan Scavino. Now, it would also kind of withdraw the contempt of Congress resolutions filed against each other over this defiance of these subpoenas. And as they said, the committee was used as a political weapon with a singular focus on taking down Donald Trump and his advisors through the intentional manipulation of facts and the silencing of the minority party. Former President Donald Trump has also called for members of the House panel that investigated the January 6, 2021 riot to be indicted. In fact, he said on Truth Social that the unAmerican weaponization of our law enforcement has reached levels of illegality never thought possible before. Hence, he called on the Justice Department to indict the unselect J6 committee for illegally deleting and destroying all of their findings. Our former commander-in-chief has also vowed that one of his first acts of reelect, or if he's reelected to office, would be to free those who were imprisoned in relation to the January 6, 2021 Capitol riot, who he labeled as hostages being wrongfully imprisoned. Now, what do y'all think about this? Is this the truth finally coming out regarding January 6th? Well, stick around, guys, because we got a lot to cover today. But first, here's Representative Byron talking about this recent verdict against former President Donald Trump, that basically it's a travesty of justice. Oh, and by the way, guys, don't forget to take a second, hit the like button for the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this video. I want to thank y'all so much for being so supportive. Your likes, your subscriptions, you guys sharing these videos really means the world to us. Appreciate you guys.
So, Congressman, there was a report in Politico today that says that the former president is demanding that Speaker Mike Johnson help him overturn his New York conviction. It says Trump was still angry when he made the call, according to those who have heard accounts of it from Johnson, dropping frequent F-bombs as he spoke with the soft-spoken and pious GOP leader. Quote, "We have to overturn this," Trump insisted. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I don't have a reaction because I'm not aware that this call even took place. I talked to Mike Johnson, it seems like every other day, not heard anything about this. So let me go back and actually find out what's happening here. Let me just say for the record, of course the president has a right to be upset. What happened in Lower Manhattan was a travesty of justice. And now you have the Democrats trying to have this moral equivalency between Hunter Biden being convicted in Delaware. What happened in Lower Manhattan was a violation of Donald Trump's constitutional rights. Nobody's above the law, but Donald Trump is not below the law. So if there are things that happen up here on Capitol Hill where we are funding departments that are violating the constitutional rights of citizens, no matter who that citizen might be, Congress has a responsibility to look into that and to act as well.
And what can Congress do about that?
Well, primarily, there's been talk about looking at some of the funding that goes to local jurisdictions that violate the constitutional rights of citizens. Because all these local prosecutors, all these local areas, they all want federal funds. Well, if you're going to take federal money, you have a responsibility to protect the constitutional rights of every citizen. You don't get to pick and choose. And unfortunately, in Lower Manhattan, Judge Merchan and Alvin Bragg, they chose to violate Donald Trump's due process rights.
Yeah. We expect that Bragg and Colangelo will testify before the House Judiciary Committee. What would you want to, I know you're on oversight, but what would you hope they would be pressed on in that room, in that hearing, Congressman?
Well, I think the key thing is why did they try to go through this scheme? And it was a scheme. This is important for people to understand. Why go through this scheme of resurrecting a supposed misdemeanor that has passed the statute of limitations using a federal election law, knowing that the FEC had already looked at this case and they decided to proceed anyway? I think with respect to Mr. Colangelo, what lawyer do you know? I know a lot of lawyers in this business especially. What lawyer leaves a prominent job, being the number 3 at Main Justice, to go down to be a frontline prosecutor in some state jurisdiction in Lower Manhattan unless you have a political axe to grind? And also, have there been any communications between Mr. Colangelo, the White House counsel, and anybody at the Department of Justice? These are important issues to ferret out because we are witnessing the political persecution of the Republican nominee by Joe Biden's Department of Justice.
Well, guys, many are saying that this Trump verdict, it's probably going to get overturned. In fact, Donald Trump supporters are encouraged with their prospects as news about the January 6th committee are turning into Donald Trump's favor. Now, first of all, it turns out the January 6th Congressional Committee allegedly falsely claimed that it did not have evidence that showed former President Donald Trump's administration requested National Guard assistance. According to a report detailing a hidden transcript that was recently released, Georgia Republican Representative Barry Loudermilk, who's heading the investigation into this, said that the former J6 Select Committee apparently withheld Mr. Ornato's critical witness testimony from the American people because it contradicted their previous or their predetermined narrative. And that Mr. Ornato's testimony proves what Mr. Meadows has been saying all along. President Trump did, in fact, offer 10,000 National Guard troops to secure the U.S. Capitol, which was turned down ultimately. And then, of course, Anthony Ornato is the former White House Deputy Chief of Staff. And what Loudermilk released was a transcript of Ornato's interview with the original Pelosi-appointed January 6th committee. So, yeah, basically what they're trying to say here is that former Representative Liz Cheney's January 6th committee suppressed evidence that the Trump administration pushed for 10,000 National Guard members to be on the streets. And instead of releasing this evidence to the committee, they decided to include, which included 7 Democrats and 2 now former Republican Congress members, Cheney and Adam Kinzinger. They concluded it found no evidence that the Trump administration had called for 10,000 National Guard members to Washington, D.C. to protect the Capitol. But if Ornato's interview is to be believed, that's simply not true. Now, former President Donald Trump himself has long claimed that he has requested the National Guard, but that the then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi failed to act on the request. Media outlets such as the Washington Post supposedly debunked Donald Trump's comments and then even awarded him 4 Pacinos. Now, Loudermilk just released the transcript of Ornato's interview with the committee that details just how he allegedly overheard then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows asking D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser to request as much protection for D.C. as she needed. Now, let me go ahead and quote this part from Ornato's interview here, guys. So just listen, quote, "And I remember the number 10,000 coming up. Now, the president wants to make sure that you have enough. He is willing to ask for 10,000. I remember that number," end quote. D.C. Mayor Bowser ultimately asked for just over 300 National Guard members, requesting that they not be armed and only work to assist local police. Ornato even asked or added that after Bowser refused additional National Guard members, the Trump White House requested the Defense Department have a quick reaction force on hand. Ornato said he remembered Chief Mark Meadows talking to the DOD about that. He said that he remembered Chief Meadows letting him know that, hey, there was going to be National Guard that's going to be at Joint Base Andrews in case they're going to need some more, and that they're going to make sure that they're out there. Now, Ornato's testimony also matched what former President Donald Trump's administration aide Kash Patel said during the testimony amid Chicago's failed efforts to boot Trump from the ballot over the claims that his 2024 presidential run violates the 14th Amendment. According to Patel, Mayor Bowser wrote in a letter herself on approximately January 4th, declining further requests for National Guard services outside of the 346 National Guardsmen already authorized. And so the authorization came in beforehand. It was already relayed to the appropriate officials in D.C. and the Capitol Police. It was declined, and they acted when their request finally came in on January 6th. But guess what, guys? The judge in the Colorado case determined that Patel was not a credible witness. Now, a little bit of context here. So as of last year, a group of voters from Colorado decided to sue our former president, arguing that Donald Trump should not be allowed to hold political office again. They pointed to the Capitol riot on January 6, 2021, saying he violated a Civil War era rule in the 14th Amendment. Now, the rule prevents officers of the United States, members of Congress, or state legislators who engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the Constitution from holding political office, which, when the case was ultimately brought to the United States Supreme Court, the justices unanimously ruled in Donald Trump's favor. What this means is that he'll stay on the Colorado ballot for 2024, and it also put a stop to similar efforts in other states to keep him off of theirs. Now, if we go back to the January 6th committee, Donald Trump has repeatedly claimed before this that Cheney deleted evidence that his administration wanted a greater presence of National Guard members. Now, according to the Donald Trump on Truth Social, why did American disaster Liz Cheney illegally delete and destroy most of the evidence? And not to mention related items from the January 6th committee of political thugs and misfits. This act of extreme sabotage makes it impossible for my lawyers to properly prepare for and present a proper defense of their client, Donald Trump. Trump continued on to say that all of this information on crazy Nancy Pelosi turning down 10,000 soldiers that he offered to guard the Capitol building and beyond is gone. And sure enough, the previous January 6th committee's final report determined that Donald Trump never gave any order to deploy the National Guard. Loudermilk is chair of the House administration's subcommittee on oversight, which is looking into the January 6th committee's handling of the investigation. In his statement and transcript release, Loudermilk said that the committee hid Ornato's testimony. He hid it. Now, according to him, this is just one example of important information the former select committee hid from the public because it clearly contradicted what they wanted the American people to believe. And this is exactly why his investigation is committed to uncovering all of the facts, no matter what the outcome is. Now, like my uncle told me, he hopes that there's a J6 committee to investigate the J6 committee. And it looks like we may actually be getting that with this House Loudermilk investigation. Definitely some interesting insights, you guys. And yeah, so by the way, if you guys haven't already, please take a second, hit the like button for the video. I really appreciate you guys. Also want to thank y'all so much for subscribing to the channel and for sharing this video. You guys are absolutely amazing. But guys, there's some very interesting developments already coming from this Republican January 6th counter investigation. So first is the House GOP-led effort to revoke subpoenas that the House Select Committee on January 6th sent to key aides of former President Trump. And it's exactly as it sounds. Representatives Andy Biggs, Thomas Massie, Eric Burlison introduced a resolution to rescind subpoenas that the now defunct committee sent to Steve Bannon, to Mark Meadows, to Peter Navarro, and Dan Scavino. And it would also withdraw the contempt of Congress resolutions filed against each individual over his defiance of those subpoenas. And as Burlison said on X, the subpoenas issued by the illegitimate committee for Bannon, Navarro, Scavino, and Meadows were insufficient and should be rescinded, and the contempt of Congress referrals should be based on those subpoenas. Those should be withdrawn. So essentially, Bannon, Trump's former strategic advisor, and Navarro, his former trade advisor, they were both sentenced to 4 months in prison in cases stemming from their contempt referrals to Congress. Meadows or Scavino were not prosecuted by the Department of Justice. But again, these actions against Donald Trump's aides are a part of the January 6th committee created by the former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and have only been criticized as part of a Democratic Party attack on former President Donald Trump and anyone who happens to be loyal to him. Now, people are watching this legislation very, very closely, guys. They're saying that any Republican who doesn't sign on, they should be primaried out of office. Now, it might take time, but it may be time to call our representatives, you guys. You know what I'm saying? Now, Donald Trump, he called it a total and complete American tragedy that Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, another former aide, have been ordered to prison for separately refusing to comply with the congressional investigation, which is led by the now disbanded House January 6th committee. The former president claimed in a Truth Social post that members of the House panel had committed crimes, asserting they deleted and destroyed all material evidence. Now, according to Trump's Truth Social post, the unAmerican weaponization of our law enforcement has reached levels of illegality never thought possible before. After that, our former commander-in-chief called for the Justice Department to indict the unselect J6 committee for illegally deleting and destroying all of their findings. Now, apart from all of that, former President Donald Trump has vowed that one of his first acts, if reelected to office, will be to free those who were imprisoned in relation to the January 6, 2021 Capitol riot, who he believes are labeled as hostages. And he said on his Truth Social post that his first acts will next, or his first acts as our next president will be to close the border, drill baby drill, and free the January 6 hostages being wrongfully imprisoned. That's a tall order, guys. And this is a lot. More than 1,350 people have been charged in nearly all 50 states for crimes related to the breach of the U.S. Capitol after rioters stormed the building to protest former President Donald Trump's election loss and the validity of Biden's win. Now, out of those, at least 560 defendants received sentences, while at least 335 were sentenced to periods of incarceration. Nearly 490 individuals were charged with assaulting or impeding law enforcement, a felony, and the investigation remains ongoing. Now, already a federal appeals court in Washington, D.C. has ruled that some criminal defendants were charged in connection with the Capitol riot had their sentences improperly increased. The U.S. Court of Appeals for D.C. Circuit ruled Friday that defendant Larry Brock's sentence improperly included charges of interference with the administration of justice, and the longest sentence was handed down to former Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio, who was sentenced to 22 years in prison after being found guilty of seditious conspiracy by a jury in Washington, D.C. 3 other leaders of the Proud Boys were each sentenced to between 15 and 18 years. So what do y'all think about this? Like, what do you think about these revelations from the January 6th investigation? Please drop me your thoughts down below. I want to hear from you guys. But there you go. Layers upon layers of controversy and calls for justice from every corner. It's very clear that these events are more than just passing headlines. They're a part of a larger narrative that continues to unfold right in front of us. So, while you're here, guys, make sure you check out our latest video on yet another gripping judicial drama here. This time we're diving into the recent bombshell in Fulton County where a judge was caught allegedly assisting DA Fani Willis's office during this high-profile young thug YSL trial. Implications of this could be huge, guys, but not just for the trial, but for the entire justice system at large. But if you haven't already checked that video out, make sure to check it out right now. I'll leave a link for you guys for that video down in the description down below this video. Again, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button as well. We really appreciate your support. Share this video, and I'm gonna see you guys on the next one.